What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. This is our top 10 hottest selling comics of the week, our weekly video series brought to you by PopCultureZone.com. Before we get into this week's top 10 books, don't forget to check out PopCultureZone.com's. Their links are below. Check them out if you're interested in getting your hands on some awesome exclusive and incentive variants at affordable costs, CGC slabs, and of course all different kinds of pop culture items, including toys and statues. And if you're buying raw books, they ship at a flat rate fee of only $4.99. Pop Culture Zone is also on eBay, where they still hold a 100% customer feedback rating with over 8,000 ratings this year alone. So again, those links are below. Check them out and make sure you follow them on eBay as well.
Let's just go into it. Now, I do have a little bit of a theme that I want to discuss after I talk about all three of them.
Hey, it's your show, man. You can do whatever you want.
All right. Okay, let's get into my third pick. DC doing things. New Teen Titans annual number 2. This book, consisting of the first appearance of Vigilante, obviously Adrian Chase as Vigilante in costume, so make sure proper context is there. This book had a 123% upward trend in sales. Recent high, CGC 9.8 high sale, $339. Now, let's break this down because this is proper perspective, folks. I always state all the time, don't get so caught up on high sales. They're fun to look at. They're fun to see what one individual may have paid for a book at a certain period of time. But I'm going to look at these current fair market value and fourth quarter fair market value of last year numbers, okay? Current fair market value is sitting at $279. And if you look at the numbers for this book over the last couple of months, this book has been it's just even in January. I mean, we're only a week into February. The numbers were all over the place. You had sales of the 339 high. You had some going for like 300, 310. You had some going for like 250, 280. But then you had some selling for like 160, 190. It was really all over the place. This is why looking at that high sale is not an indicator of what this book is truly doing. Current fair market value sitting at $279. That is an average of all those books. So if you were in the market to buy this book right now, instead of looking at that high saying I need to pay over $300, you can look at the average value of the recent sales and gauge something that may be more, I could say, beneficial to not only your pocketbook now, but to a purchasing price that can do you justice as the book moves forward through time in the future, whether it's the short term or the long term, to where you might be able to see more of a return on investment instead of thinking that you need to, well, that last book sold for almost $340. Man, that means I got to set the goalpost higher and spend $380 or something like that. That's not the case. Now let's compare this to fourth quarter fair market value of last year. And for anybody that doesn't know what a fourth quarter is, it's the last 3 months of the year. That fair market value, and again, that's an average of everything that's sold, 9.8 CGCs, $215. So if you look at the current high and look at that fair market value, that's a 58% increase based on recent sales. But that's a bit of a distorted way to look at this, because if you compare the two different fair market values, it's only increased roughly about 28%. That's I'm looking at 279 and 215, doing the math in my head, roughly around 30% increase. So the book hasn't done that much increasing if you look at it from an average standpoint. So my advice to you guys, look, there's a lot of hype on this book, obviously, because of the Peacemaker show. I'm only on episode 3 still. To be quite honest, I don't know about you guys, I'm not really a fan of how they're doing Vigilante. I think he's trying too hard to be Ryan Reynolds, and I'm just not feeling it. But recent high raw, this book sold for $80. That's definitely a bit of a peak for this book too. It's been moving up and up, but with the volatility, I meant to say, of what this book's doing in a 9.8 and how it's all over the place. It just goes to show me, again, and I've been saying this a lot, all it takes is one book at one time. And keep in mind, comic book, there's not a plethora of 9.8 80s comic books on the market or on eBay at any given time for the most part. But if you're in the market for a new washer and dryer, or a new stereo, or a new Ford F-150, for the most part, you could go to any store that sells those products and you can find a plethora of them. They're always there and you're going to find them at the suggested retail price. Comics work differently because sometimes there's only a few scattered on the market at any given time. So somebody may have bought a book for $170 of this book because there was nobody else bidding it up at that point in time. People were at work. Nobody was caring about, the book of Vigilante's first appearance. And then maybe some people, the next week, we're just watching that first episode of Peacemaker where Vigilante shows up. And it takes two people to be on eBay at the same time that in those last few minutes of that auction item winding down, it just takes two people to battle it out. And they say, I want it. No, I want it. No, I want it. And it's a tug of war. And instead of selling for 170, 200, 270, it sells for 339.
Absolutely. To each his own as to how this character is being portrayed in Peacemaker. Fact of the matter, Vigilante is getting the exposure more so than on the CW and becoming a fan favorite. No doubt about that. Christopher with the K, we want your opinion on this if you have one.
Yeah. So kind of for me, this kicks in a little bit of my general advice because I haven't watched Peacemaker, but when comic books show up on a top 10 list, the interesting thing about this one is it reminds me this was on some top 10 lists about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pay attention to top 10 lists, I usually recommend don't buy when they're on a top 10 list. Sell when they're on a top 10 list. If you're in the market to be selling that book, that's fine if you are. But when you're thinking about buying the book and you're like, it's on the top 10, I really caution against that FOMO. I really caution against, caution towards, why don't you wait and see how this plays out? Because no matter what everybody thinks about this character right now, my assumption is this show will end. People will move on to a couple other things. And if you really, really want to jump on this character, you really believe that they're going to come out with a Vigilante show or some kind of, he's going to be in all these different projects, then you have a little chance to buy on a dip at least.
Right.
And that's kind of how I feel about this. Now, if you love that character and you really have to have it and you just think it's going to go skyrocketing, I would definitely look at some Raws because people are going to be jumping on those slabs right now.
Yep.
Yeah, Chris says that all the time too. That's a very good
All
point. Anyways, all right, moving on. Your second most interesting book of the week. What do you got, Chris?
All right, this is a very interesting one. A lot of controversy. I'm not going to get into the controversy. We're talking Mouse, Survivor's Tale, #1. It's a trade paperback. It was pulled from Tennessee school district. I'm assuming it was just one school district because it was a school board decision. I don't think it was like a whole state or anything like that. This saw a 1,050% upward trend in sales. Wow. And, usually when a book sees this type of upward trend in sales, it's simply because it wasn't selling before. I mean, it wasn't moving units. So keep that in mind. A recent high sale of $126. Now, this is raw. These aren't graded books. This is a, graphic novel trade type bound book. But check this out. Previously selling for $5. And if you look at the recent sales data, you can see this book selling for $5, $6, $10, and then it just skyrocket. And I know this is a unique situation because it was such a controversial issue that brought the spotlight on this book. It wasn't like, this character has been casted in the MCU and then, first, this is definitely different. It's definitely a unique situation. And I get it. And controversy, especially at this level, does something, it's how we operate as human beings. But I'm going to come back to this when I talk a little bit about my theme after I talk about my first pick on the list. So I'll leave it at that. I'll let you guys chime into what you think of. I mean, just crazy. I mean, like I said, $5 to over $125 is just crazy.
you got your third most interesting book of the week, Chris. What is it?
All right. My number one pick this week was the number one on the list. I had to talk about it. Black Panther number 3. This is, cover A. The cover A was number 1 simply because of the units it sold. First appearance of Tosin Adoye. And this, people are just going after this book. Obviously, pairing this to what may happen for the Black Panther franchise in the MCU. Let's look at these numbers. 300% upward trend in sales. Recent high, CGC 9.8, $175. My question there is, how did CGC get this book and get it graded and shipped back to somebody so fast? You know what I think it might be, though? It might be dealers that are sending out 20, 30 plus copies, and getting that, paying the $5 for the, to make sure they get those 9.8s. And they might be pre-selling them. I don't know, though. I'm just throwing that out there because that's the only thing that I can fathom might be the case. Because if these were actually sales where somebody actually had the book, sold it, and could ship it out right away, I need to put on my detective boots and start knocking down some doors because we got a problem. All right. Recent high raw, $50. Now, this is a lesson that I want you all watching to learn about data. And this is something that I talked about on my channel recently because and again, I'm not calling anybody out by name. It's not about that, but it's about calling out the fact that people that have a platform need to be responsible with how they deliver data. And somebody did this specific information on their YouTube. And ironically enough, they used data to misinform folks, and the person that sold the books that he used from the data came into that video and said, you got this wrong. And I'm explaining. If you look there is a high sale in the data that says $119.95 for this book. And you may ask, well, Chris, you have a recent high raw $50. This is all raw sales right here, all raw, all those numbers. And you could see throughout, the last week or so, this book was selling for, anywhere from $35 to $50 consistently, solid. And then boom, $119. Oh my God, that must mean that this book is even taking off even more. So I'm going to go sell my books at $120, or as a buyer, I need to get one. I need to pay $125, right? No, do some more research. Put on your detective boots. That $119 sale was a 3-book lot of 3 copies.
That's an outlier, Chris. That's what
of this book. It is an outlier. And this same thing happened where somebody was looking at high sales and saying that this book dropped like 80% because it had a high sale of X amount, which was like 3 times the amount of the average sales. And if you go on eBay, you can see the sale. It was a lot. And so it wasn't just the single book. It was a lot. And sometimes love cover price. We use their data all the time, but sometimes these outliers are indeed mistakes. So I cannot come here and tell you that this book is selling for that much because it's not. How do I know? Because I went and looked at the sales specifically myself. I found the sale and now I'm properly informed. Okay. So again, this book sitting at a recent high raw of $50. It's very standard for what it's been doing, at least over the last week. Who knows where it'll go from here. I'm not really mad at this book getting so hot, but Jeff, Bronze Age, I've been talking all year so far about my theme for 2022, and that's being a more educated and smart collector, and that goes for all of us. So I want to hear a little bit of your guys' thoughts on this book first, though.
Here's the deal. This may have been hot with or without this. However, there was a pretty large outlet, a comic book based outlet, that stated that this character will be the next Miles Morales. And that caused a crazy fucking stir, right? Because this isn't a highly ordered book right now. And everybody went into a frenzy. You had people, I mean, I was just like, that's insane. What? Miles Morales is Spider-Man, right? This guy, we don't know what he's going to be, but Miles Morales was always Spider-Man. People are saying this could be the next Black Panther. Could be. Yeah. Who knows? But Jesus Christ, man, it was insane. So I think there was a lot of FOMO. I don't know, man. This is like, it's cool to see this in a way because there's a lot of attention in the industry. Does that make sense? But it's also like, this shit's crazy. That's how I feel. Christopher with the K, your thoughts?
So yeah, a few things. The first thing, kind of to speak to what you just said, Jeff. It's weird. If you watch the last month, it's been week to week to week. Bedlam, Red Goblin Queen, Tosin. It's just been, the Grogu cover on Darth Vader 20.
Yeah, that's next week. You gotta look out for that guy. Pick it up if you see it. Yeah,
it's just been crazy how and I also, and I don't have the numbers on this, but from what I can kind of sense from everybody, it feels like the overall hype machine is kind of slowing down a little bit when it comes to the overall comics market. And now people are kind of jumping towards these new books a little bit more. That's anecdotal evidence. I don't really have the numbers to back that up, but that's kind of what it feels like when I put my feelers out there across social media when people talk about these books. When it comes to the actual book, sure, I think this is a book that could, he could be the next Black Panther. Why not? I think it could be. If that happens, it'd be a great book because it was low ordered, because that information didn't come, that he was going to be in it didn't come out until after FOC. So I have one copy of the A cover. I'm going to hold it. Like, I'm not going to, try to flip that thing for 20, 30, 40 bucks or whatever right now, because, hey, someday it could be worth a lot more. Why not hold on to it?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, no, but I was just going to kind of finish up by saying like the last thing, and I really have to love what Chris talked about with that outlier sale too, because I go back and I do these top 5 not to buy lists. Some people have probably seen it. They're in the chat. And then I go back and I look at those 3 months later and I say, where are those books at? And I have learned from personal experience digging through those, because I always go to cover price and then I go to eBay. And looking through those eBays, you sometimes see like, oh, there's that sale and something was hinky. So doing your research. I love seeing you say that because that's so important.